So now that we've had lunch, let's talk about feeding and eating disorders. So the chapter is called Feeding and Eating Disorders because it includes some of the feeding disorders of childhood that were in that DSM-4 child and adolescence chapter. So a big addition is a new diagnosis called binge eating disorder. This has a lot of research behind it. And I mean, there's folks who still think it's too much and it shouldn't be in there. But what it is doing the binge eating that people do who have bulimia, same type of binge eating, but then the person with binge eating disorder doesn't do anything to compensate for the ingestion of all those calories. So they don't make themselves purge in any way. They don't over-exercise, nothing. They just eat it. And now by binge eating, recall from DSM-4, bulimia, I mean, we don't mean just eating a lot. So I did a kind of a paraphrase there, but binge eating is definitely eating a larger amount than people would consider to be in the realm of normal in a distinct period of time, too. So somebody might eat a lot and throughout the course of a day, but this is kind of, sitting down in a period and just eating, and having a sense of lack of control. And people often feel shame and remorse and a lot of negative feelings about it. And this needs to occur as often as, at least as often as once a week for at least 3 months. So one reason for adding this diagnosis is that these were the largest group of people who were diagnosed with eating disorder, NOS. This is the biggest NOS group. There are a lot of people that fit this profile. Interestingly, the ratio between men and women is a lot closer than it is for the other disorders. It's about 3-2 or 2-1 women to men, so as opposed to, like, say, 9-1 for the other eating disorders. And also, so that gives us a little bit more specificity. And the other reason is that there's just some good research behind it to support that these folks look different in terms of, say, psychopathology. They're a bit more severe than people who are just overweight without binge eating. They're not as severe as people with bulimia nervosa. They're kind of this middle group. There are treatments that work for this. I mean, they do seem like it's a valid grouping. It makes sense based on the research. Another change to eating disorders is this gets at the second most prominent, most frequent group of ED-NOS, were folks who otherwise met criteria for anorexia nervosa, but they didn't meet that amenorrhea requirement. So a woman of childbearing age would need to have missed at least 3 periods in a row. And so often, people were really just as severe who didn't quite meet that criterion. Their periods were kind of irregular, but they just didn't have the 3 in a row. So DSM-4, based on that research, DSM-5, based on that research, has gotten rid of that requirement. Another requirement that has been changed is DSM-4 used to have this kind of pejorative sounding language where the weight criterion in anorexia said something like refusal to maintain a body weight that's at least minimally normal. It sounds like the person is making this choice, and I mean they are in a way. We're all choosing, I guess, in a way, but it's a disorder. It's not a choice like the rest of us who don't have anorexia would have. So now it just says restriction of energy intake relative to requirements leading to a significantly low body weight. There isn't that feeling of blame or choice. So another change is that the frequency requirement for bulimia has been reduced to once a week instead of twice a week. That's based on research that indicated that people who engaged in those behaviors once a week were really just as severe, just as troubled, didn't look any different than people who did it twice a week or more. So, but you can see how for eating disorders, the threshold has been dialed down a little. We have this new binge eating disorder, and bulimia don't have to engage in the behavior as frequently.